South Africa has attracted billions of rands in private investment into renewable energy in recent years, yet many households and businesses continue to face rising electricity tariffs, unreliable supply, as well as regulatory hurdles that slow the transition to a more competitive electricity market. While reforms are underway, questions still remain about whether policy is keeping pace with investment and innovation. Joining us to unpack this is the spokesperson for Free SA, that's Gideon Joubert. Gideon, good to have you on the program this afternoon. So South Africa, as mentioned, has seen unprecedented private investment in renewable energy. So I guess it begs the question really as to why are ordinary consumers still not experiencing cheaper or more reliable electricity?
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to chat to you about this. And I think we could summarize briefly two of the major sticking points to this rollout of this adoption to two potential causes. The one is regulatory complexity, which you've already mentioned, and the other one is policy uncertainty. Now, whether you're looking at a suburban or even commercial rooftop solar that is a more sort of to the business or to the household limited adoption of an alternative energy solution, or if you're looking at a more mega project that is a private energy provider that is registered and that is supplying electricity to the public and is capable of selling it into the national grid. Those are considerable and sizable investments that need to pay for themselves over many years or decades. And there's a demonstrated hunger from investors to invest in these projects. That's why we have them. If there was no desire to invest in them, we wouldn't be having as many of these projects as we do, and we wouldn't be having a conversation about how successful they are. But unless we get some call it deregulation to a point where we're cutting through the red tape. And there are many great established international models of how to do this that we can, we don't have to copy and paste them, but we can take them, we can adapt them domestically so we have a national policy that is coherent. And where we don't sit with situations where different municipalities, different metros, different provinces all apply regulations and policy differently, which creates a lot of uncertainty and a lot of expense. And the other one is policy uncertainty. If you, as a suburban consumer, and you are looking at investing in solar, for example, which is now the most prolific form of alternative private energy at the consumer level, this has become considerably less expensive from where it was 5 years ago, but it still represents a sizable amount of money that you have to invest in this type of solar setup, which is fortunately quite scalable. If you cannot say for certainty that your municipality is not going to, in inverted commas, punish you with punitive tariffs because you're now not consuming electricity off the grid as you were, and that they need to recoup fees for the infrastructure, that is also going to make you far less likely to put that chunk of change down for essentially supplying your own electricity and feeding it into the grid, being the second part.
Gideon, you also argue that regulation has become one of the biggest barriers to energy reform. Let's speak about this then. What are the most urgent regulations that government should remove or even amend?
I think we can start with a big one, and that is that there's very much a state monopoly on the generation of electricity. This has been slowly reforming and changing, not I think because there was necessarily outright political will to change it, but reality caught up with politics and reality caught up with policy and with legislation, in the sense where you can no longer deny that this is the direction in which the country and the world is going. So I think having sensible national policy that opens the door for competitive firms, commercially and otherwise, to come in and actually privately generate electricity at scale to sell to consumers, and therefore dismantle the Eskom monopoly and the state monopoly on electricity generation, that would be a bold and massive first step. There are other ways you can slowly chip away at it over time, and I think that's been happening. But I do think we sit now in the situation with the rising energy costs, with the unreliability of the grid, with our own crisis of deindustrialization, where we're losing a lot of heavy manufacturing because of the costs and the unreliability or unavailability of electricity. We can't really afford to have long-winded debates about it anymore. And I think the big question on the table now is how quickly can we deregulate this Eskom monopoly? Because that would be, I think, where we need to start with this.
Gideon, municipalities rely heavily on electricity sales to generate revenue as well. How do we then introduce greater competition without even undermining municipal finances?
I think it's a bit of both actually,
Yeah.
because ESCOM is part of the bigger structural problem. And I think a big part of the structural problem is that we put all our eggs in one basket with regards to national electricity generation. This is coming from way back in the day, in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s, when South Africa, at the first time, created a national energy infrastructure. And it's understandable that at that point, 100 years ago, the state was the only player in a position to generate electricity and at scale and provide it. But we have now moved on, and we are in a position now where we can break that up. So if we wanted to get rid of the structural issue, I think it's to allow other players in to start building structure and infrastructure primarily, and making a profit out of it, and that would at least spread the risk and spread the costs over a much broader area of investors and players. So a big part of it is, yes, structural, but a big part of the structural is the fact that ESCOM is the only one that actually is there to provide.
Gideon, let me thank you for your time. That's Gideon Joubert. He's a spokesperson for Free SA. Of course, speaking to us about South Africa having attracted so many billions of rands in renewable energy, but still, households and businesses continue to face rising electricity costs.